You know, when you have a conversation with somebody and it totally makes you stop and think about who you are and who you are authentically. Welcome to Simply Sarah. I'm Sarah Stockham, and I'm super excited today to bring in Drew. Drew Mercury is what he goes by, Drew Mercury Fitness. I'm sorry, I'm going to do this in terms of names, but his name really is Drew Mercuris. Did I say it right?
Yes.
Beautiful, with a little bit of a Greek background there. Drew, it's just so incredible to see you today. And I walk away from every conversation that we've had just thinking about how my life has been impacted for better just by being with you. And I just appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Tell me how you got to be such a successful entrepreneur doing all the different things that you're doing.
Well, for a while in my life, that wasn't the case. I never went to college except for a couple months of community college. And I sold real estate for a few years, but that wasn't something that really interested me. There was a little bit of a little too much misleading information as real estate agents go that wasn't sitting well with me. Plus, I unfortunately got into it at one of the worst markets back in 1990 when I was just 20 years old. So I tried it for 3 years. It didn't work out. Then I sort of bounced around waiting tables, having odd jobs, things like that. Originally was born and raised in New York. When I would turn 27, I said, okay, things aren't working out here. I need to start a new life where nobody knows me. So I moved to California without even having ever visited. And I only knew one person. I just drove cross country, stayed with a friend who was the only person I knew out here for like 3 days, got a job at the Cheesecake Factory, got an apartment, and then started my life out here. And then realized after a year or two that I pretty much had the same life, but 3,000 miles away with better weather. So anyway, after several more years of waiting tables and just getting to the point where just it was what I ended up calling a soul-sucking job, where nothing against people who serve and wait tables for a living, for their life, but just for me, it wasn't jiving with who I wanted to be and what I wanted to give. So I got to a point where I just had to figure out what else I wanted to do, and really almost just got forced out of the nest finally at the, in my early 30s. And so I always thought that I would be a good personal trainer. I always been in shape. I love to work out. And I found out you could get a good certification in about 6 months. So I took the certification, worked at a gym for about 2 years. And then after about 2 years, I decided to go off on my own and just take a chance. And I've been doing that now, having my own training business in Newport Beach, California for the last 17 years.
That's just a remarkable story. I knew that you were from New York. I knew that you had relocated into Los Angeles, but I didn't realize that you just said, hey, we're done here. We're going to go try something else. And I really appreciate the nugget that you gave there, Drew, about it was the same life.
It was
3,000 miles away with different weather, but it was the same life.
Because I brought myself with me.
I fully understand that. So what were some of the things that you did in addition to becoming a personal trainer and taking that certification that allowed you to begin this journey? Because not everybody who wants to be a personal trainer in Newport Beach, California gets to do that. And so obviously you had done work along the way. What was some of that that you're willing to share with us?
Well, one of the biggest things that happened was when I had been out here a couple of years, and again, I sort of recreated the same life and just wasn't happy. And I got to the point where I pretty much decided, I'm going to move back to New York. California is not for me. It's not working out here. And then luckily at some point I got, I guess, quiet enough in my own brain and my own mind to hear this little voice say, maybe it's you. And I heard that and I said, you know what? That probably makes sense, because it's not New York, it's not California that's creating this life, it's me. So once I did that, I was really able to start going within, really starting. I'd done some therapy in the past because I mean, we've all had various levels of a tough childhood.
Right.
Mine was no different. Mine was quite bad. My dad was a hoarder, and my house was, I grew up in absolute filth and just
Mhm.
a totally dysfunctional, unhealthy house and home. And so it made sense that I created a dysfunctional, in essence, unhappy, unhealthy life as an
Yeah.
adult because I hadn't cleaned out my mental, if you will, garbage
Yeah.
from my own brain. So I really started just trying to take a little more accountability for who I was being in my life.
Mm.
I tried to get healthier, even though I'd always been into working out. I was smoking pot. I was smoking cigarettes. I drank a little. I just, even though I looked healthy, I wasn't really healthy. I had a smoker's cough at age 30,
Mhm.
the exact opposite of who I am today.
Right.
But I had to really take responsibility for that and really start looking at those things and going about changing them. And I think I've used a lot of that with my clients. I teach a lot of self-responsibility. I don't allow my clients to make excuses. A lot of them like to, come in and use the excuse of, oh, I'm getting older, Drew. And yes, you have to respect your age, but a lot of people use it as an excuse for limitations and lack of being healthy. And I've met too many people in my world that are 60 and 70 and still are super vibrant and strong and happy and healthy. So I just don't buy into that. And I also come from personal experience saying that might be the case that you're unhealthy now, but you can make different choices within your mind, but also in your life to change that.
Drew, all those years that you were working as a server, my experience working in food service was that we got either food or discounted food there as well. So were you eating the food that was there, or were you bringing your own? There becomes a real, for me, an interesting balance between eating the food where I was working
Right.
and needing to sustain my body, and it was fast and easy versus, and maybe not necessarily versus, but then really thinking about personal choices that I was making in terms of what I was choosing to eat.
At that time, I was not making great food choices. Luckily, I've always been blessed with a fairly high metabolism. Plus, serving at the Cheesecake Factory is a very active job. So
Yes.
I was burning a lot of calories, but I was, for the most part, eating that food, which, if you've ever eaten at the Cheesecake Factory, there's not many healthy choices on that menu.
I love that you are so willing to look at all the different pieces of your life and share what's worked and what hasn't worked. And I also really appreciate that you began to look inside. And I was taken back by just your admission about, because I've been to your home, I had never suspected at all that you had grown up in this place that had filth and hoarding. Your place it's gorgeous. And there's beautiful light that comes in through every single window, and it's fun and it's playful, and it's just an amazing space. Was that a transition that you really found that you had to work towards, or was that something that came pretty easily for you once you made the mental decision of this is where I've been and how I've lived, but I'm making new choices now? Was that a pretty fast move that direction then?
Well, when I lived at my childhood home, at a certain point when I became a teenager, my older sister moved out, and she had always kept her room fairly clean. So I wanted to take over her room when she left and keep up that cleanliness because it allowed me sort of like a little sanctuary in the midst of all this chaos and filth. And so once I lived in that room, I tended to spend most of my time in that room. And then when I moved to my own place, I was traditional, like a traditional man in some ways. Like I didn't dust that much, and sometimes there was pet hair on the floor. But other than that, I kept a fairly clean home, primarily because for most of my life, I made a fairly concerted effort to not be like my dad in a lot of ways, including the hoarding. And so that helped that habit really be developed.
Yeah. I think this is a point where I say that in my own life, in my own extended family, that there is also somebody who hoards. And what we've had conversations. I've had internal conversations about why and what does this look like and what are the pieces about, because you look at the family makeup and you go, yeah, there's been loss and tragedy, and I'm not discounting that at all. But I'm also realizing that those pieces can truly play into a person's psyche and how they choose to move forward. And even moving into this property, before we began recording, you were asking how we were doing, and I was sharing with you that we've been here for 8 weeks and that we had literally taken every piece of wood out of the shop and put it out on the lawn and looked at everything and decided what was worth keeping and what wasn't. And part of the reason for doing that was because it was just a mishmash of stuff that was there. And you had beautiful, old, gorgeous black walnut in with stuff that wasn't going to be usable for anything. And yesterday we went to a place to discard a whole bunch of stuff, and you weigh on the scale. The truck went across the scale to go in, and then you go get, you put your stuff in the right places, and then you weigh on the scale on the way out, and that's how that you pay for that. And it was $14.53 for 600 pounds of stuff that we took off of the property, just saying, we're done with this. This doesn't have a reason to be here. And as we were crossing over the river coming back home, there was just this beautiful mist. It was a cool morning, just the beautiful mist of a very, very lazy river, Tennessee River moving. And I just could see that I was mirroring that peaceful place, because for 8 weeks we have been creating this massive 600 pound pile of things that needed to go someplace, but not here. And knowing that I was coming back to a place where that stuff was gone was just such a great, fulfilling feeling. And to know that we'll never have to wait for 600 pounds again, that we can go, now that we know where it is and how to do it, there's that learning curve as well, then you just go more often, you take stuff as you find it. But I really respect you coming in and sharing that point, because I think that as the audience is listening in, there are going to be other people who have family members and having those same kind of conversations of living with or knowing people that they care about who will never allow them to their home, who will only meet them someplace else. And part of that is just because of the conditions that they choose to live inside of.
True.
And so that then comes to what you talked about, cleaning up your mind as well. I know you to be a very disciplined person, Drew, and I adore that about you, because it's not the warlord type of discipline. It is, I am choosing this because it's the absolute best for me, and I am embracing that and bringing it into my life. And it just exudes out of you, and the people around you, they get to decide if they want to do that as well. So as you were beginning that process of cleaning your mind, so to speak, were there things that you made choices about? I know that for me, I looked at my friend list, who I was eating lunch with on a consistent basis, and began to quietly but purposefully make some changes there because of the conversation level that was taking place there. I wanted a different type of conversation. How about for you?
For me, I mean, I've always been pretty choosy about my friends, but for me, the biggest thing I started doing was, you asked me, like, when I moved into my own place, let's say, did I leave the hoarding behind, if you will, or bring it with me? That was part of it, but what I really needed to do was look at the aspects of my personality that I felt and came to realize that were a result of my childhood, and work on those things more so than really the people around me. Because I figured the people around me, once I worked on myself, would sort of take care of themselves. Like I would attract the type of people I wanted not only to be around, but who I wanted to be myself. And so I had to look at things like when I was a kid, I had to lie a lot. My friends, because they always wanted to come in my house and see what it was like, because they were just curious.
Right.
And I had to always make up an excuse why they couldn't come in. I also had to just create a totally different sort of like identity outside of my house to try to act as normal as possible. Meanwhile, inside, I was just like a mess. So I had to really learn how to be really quick on my feet. At least that's what I think I told myself. But really, I had to become a really good liar. And that unfortunately transferred to me when I was an adult, and I didn't even realize it. I was constantly telling like little white lies even about things that weren't important. And luckily, about 20 years ago, I had a girlfriend who got to know me pretty well. And after a few months, she kept catching me in like little untruths and mistruths. And she finally said, I don't know if you know this, but you seem to like lie a lot. And I had no idea what she was talking about. And she called me on it a few times. And then I started looking for it. And I realized, oh my God, I'm full of what, like 20% of the time for no real reason. And so it was that. And then it was also just the lack of self-worth I had, because my nickname and my family nickname when we were young was in the neighborhood, like with my friends and everything, was Dirt Bomb. So we were known as the Dirt Bomb family. And a lot of times my friends, when we get into fights, they would use that word to basically just trounce and win the fight. And so to have that as in some way an identity, I had to clear that out of my brain. And that took a lot to really just let that go and realize that wasn't my reality anymore. But also, again, like I said, the lying was an issue, and just also caring so much what people thought. I had such a hard time with if people, like, I just wanted people to like me and accept me. And I was, unknowingly would lie to get them to do that. Or with girlfriends, like new girlfriends, I would go out of my way to be what I called being super romantic. But meanwhile, it was just coming on way too strong, like flowers and notes and calling them and all this stuff just to keep them, once I thought they liked me a little, I just wanted to keep that. So I had to work on all that kind of stuff, more so than like, the attracting the right people. Because again, I felt like if I worked on myself, that would take care of itself after a while. And it has.
Yeah. This is touching such a sensitive place for me. This weekend, we're going to go and visit a whole bunch of different people that I grew up with. And it used to be the older generation got together because they had worked together overseas. And it didn't matter what organization you were with. If you happened to be with a church organization or a military or NGO, it didn't matter. Everybody just got together because of the shared experience of being in Africa together and the years that we were there. And I just knew in my heart that when I was asked to go this year, that the answer was yes, even though it's something that I haven't done ever. And the last time that I got together with this particular group of people, or even part of the people I graduated from high school with, small group, 53 of us that graduated from high school together from an American school overseas, was at our 10-year reunion. And so it's been a chunk of time. And yes, I've seen several different ones along the way, and they've come over for dinner or we've met up in different places, and that's been fun. But it's also been a smaller group, right? Not a huge group. I have found myself, as I have been working on the homestead this last several weeks, really listening to my internal conversation and the words, the nicknames that I used to have, and deciding if those pieces are true. And I think that I'm an adult, right? I mean, if you look at my birth certificate and you see how old I am, you go, of course, Sarah. Right. But there is this part about being able to go and choose to be the person that you authentically are, with people who may be expecting or remembering a whole different version, a whole different lifetime ago. And so it's just really cathartic to hear you say this, because these are things that I have been thinking and hadn't been talking out loud to anybody about. And what an incredible thing to hear you say these pieces, because for me also it's that place of identity. And I think for people who are listening in to Simply Sarah today, they are also listening for the places of authenticity, but also how do we energetically move that forward, right? We know that we may have some decisions to make. Maybe they're uncomfortable. Maybe the people that we know and care about aren't going to necessarily be cheerleading us on to make these changes. And yet we know internally that the path that we're on is the right one for us to be, to choose to become healthier, not just to stay in what feels to be a safe place in order to be liked, or in order to be feel like that we have community around us. As you were making these changes, were there places and points or things that you learned to do? Because inherently, okay, this is my belief system, inherently, there comes points when you say thank you to relationships, that there can be a void, and sometimes that void can feel like loneliness.
Mhm.
Were those pieces that you experienced or things that you worked your way through as you were saying, this is who I am and that's not who I am?
Yes, I definitely, probably the last step for me, as far as in this process of development. I mean, I'm not, I still have a ton of stuff to learn and grow and into and things like that. But at this stage of my life, probably the last thing to click into place was my romantic relationships. Um, I would, I got to a point, like I said, when early on I would meet a woman, and if she liked me, I would do my best to keep her liking me. And ultimately, I had a pattern where we'd start out pretty hot and heavy. And then within a few months, they'd break up with me, and I'd be sitting there like, what the hell happened?
Right.
And a lot of them tried, I think, to tell me in without not so many words what the problem was, but I wasn't able to hear it for a while. And then finally, when I did realize that aspect of what I was doing wrong and who I not doing wrong, but what wasn't working for my potential partners, let's put it that way.
Yes.
um, then I was able to start having some long-term relationships, but I only had two before my wife that I have now. As you know, you performed the ceremony a couple months ago.
Yeah.
I had two long-term relationships, and both from this, like from a distance and from the outside, seemed like, I remember, especially the one about 15, 20 years ago, people saying, "Oh my God, you guys are perfect for each other," and whatever. And for a while, it felt that way, but also I just got to the point where I realized I was settling. Um, so it was almost another way of still keeping somebody liking me by settling for something less than I really wanted.
Yeah.
And not being true to myself. So when I stood up and realized, okay, luckily for me, honestly, I say I stood up. She broke up with me because it was just, we were growing apart, and thank God she did, because we weren't supposed to be together. I see that now. And then
Yes.
my last relationship, same thing, where I did some things to sabotage it a little bit, but I also got to the point where I wasn't happy and I didn't want to settle. My friends would always say, because I got, I'm now 53. My last relationship went from when I was like 47 to like 46 to like 49. And my friends were saying, "Are you ever going to get married? Like, what are you doing?" And I always would say, "Look, I'm not going to settle. I'm not just going to marry somebody because that's what you do." And I'm so glad I didn't, because the woman I'm with now, my wife, is allows me to be exactly who I am. Wants the best for me, but I never feel like she's trying to change me or work on me or anything like that. Like, I feel 100% safe and accepted, and so hopefully that answered your question.
Absolutely. What I love about your relationship with Julianne is also that you guys stay in your lanes. You guys are
Oh,
constantly complimenting each other in terms of what your products that you're working on and things that you are doing. Um, but there isn't this, getting into each other's lane about things, and,
yeah.
definitely being aware and talking and having the conversations. But there's just something that's so incredible. And then coming back again to the fact that she was a decorator for a period of time. That was one of the things that she did. And so, again, your home is just this peaceful, beautiful, quiet place. You guys have always, as long as I've known you guys, have always had animals. Is that something that was important to you also, Drew?
I've always had a thing, especially for dogs. Julianne is an absolute animal lover. Her dad and stepmom are basically, they rescue animals. They have for years. Things, horses, chickens, everything. Turtle, I think, a couple tortoises. So she's a super animal lover. I love animals too, dogs in particular. When I was younger, we had a dog, but only for a couple of years. And so animals to me are just, they're like a godsend. And dogs in particular, we have a sweet boy, as you know, Murphy, and we just love him to death.
Yeah, he is such a keeper. And for people who are listening in, if you are somebody who loves animals, I just encourage you, even if you're living in a place where you can't have them right now, to find ways to be connecting in. I know there was a period of time for me in my life that I couldn't have animals, and I tried and got in trouble. And so it became, I started feeding birds and, putting that kind of thing out, putting food out for different. And even now there's a neighborhood cat that doesn't belong to anybody, just kind of showed up in the neighborhood, and there's an old stump of a tree, and I've been putting out, just different kinds of things out there for the cat.
Awesome.
Just because I don't know that he'll ever come inside. I don't know if he'll ever be our cat.
Yeah.
But it's just fun to watch him.
Absolutely.
And he comes up to us and will say hello, and it's always on his terms. It's never on anyone else's terms.
That's how. Even if you own the cat, that's how they are.
Exactly.
On their terms.
Yes. But there's something so freeing inside of that as well. Just knowing that that's when he's going to come over and that kind of thing. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. We will be right back after this.
Okay.
And I am finding him there.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Greg Russell. I'm the host of TechnologyTuesday.com. You can find us on the Conscious Business TV network every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the latest resources to help you make more money in your business. Join us on E360 TV. Come on.
We're having a conversation today with Drew. Drew is truly an amazing being. I met him through his wife, Julianne, and as we got to know each other, I just sensed that there was something about him that everybody would really enjoy listening in on. Just appreciate his heart, appreciate where he's coming from. And Drew, as we're continuing our conversation, I would love to know, you're an author, you speak, you have an improv background. How did you get into those places?
Well, improv, actually, I was a stand-up comedian.
Thank you.
There is a difference. I was always quite scared of doing improv. I have great respect for people who do improv. Stand-up was challenging, don't get me wrong, but improv is tough. With me, even though I've been a trainer almost 20 years, had my own business, I always, throughout most of my adult life, will come across things that I just become super passionate about.
Yes.
So when I first moved to California, I got into swing dancing, and it had a huge revival back in the early 2000s out here in California, especially. So I ended up teaching swing dancing for a couple of years. Then I've done speaking over the years. It's definitely one of the areas I find great joy in and great passion in. My form of speaking is more like sharing ideas as opposed to like getting up on stage and talking at people. But I just have always been into personal development, passionate about that. And I do like the sound of my own voice. So I do love to speak. And then when it comes to being an author, I was asked last year to add a chapter to a book anthology of wellness, as you were as well, and was really happy to do that. First time being published, and was super exciting to see my name in print and my ideas and thoughts in print, and got really good feedback from everybody who purchased the book. So I've always, in addition to my career, and I'm definitely passionate about being a trainer, but I've always had in most cases a side passion that I just really, once I find something I like, I try to get as good at it as quickly as possible and do it as often as possible. Right now it's pickleball, believe it or not.
Really? Tell me how you got into pickleball.
Julianne actually got me into it because her friends would play on Sunday mornings.
Yes.
And she didn't realize she was creating a monster. I started playing, and like you might hear from a lot of people, it's very addictive. It's a ton of fun.
Yes.
And I now play like 4 or 5 days a week, pretty much. Like most days when I'm on my break from work, I have a few hours in between my morning and afternoon clients. I go to play for a couple hours, and it's amazing. It's just so much fun, and you meet fun people and get to be out in the sun, and it's great exercise. So yeah, it's a great time.
You talked a little bit earlier about having a fast metabolism, and I know that you are really careful about what you eat. What are some of the things that you have found that have worked for you, being somebody who's really, really busy, on the go, and yet thinking ahead to when you need to be eating and what that's going to look like as you fuel your future.
So the funny thing about nutrition is it's one of the most highly debated topics, not only just not in the world only, but in fitness for sure. You go to a bookstore and you look at 25 different books on nutrition, and they could say 25 different things. So I'll preface what I'm about to say with do what works for you. What I find works for me is eating more often, and basically I've trained my body to burn a lot of the things that I eat all the time. Like my body's constantly burning because it knows it's going to be fed pretty much during my waking hours. Every 2 to 3 hours I eat something, whether it be a snack of one thing I do is I bring a cooler bag to the gym, and in that I tend to have like half a cucumber, some grapes, a banana, some nuts, a protein bar, some egg bites. And most days, those 5 to 6 things are gone between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. when I have my morning clients. Pretty much once an hour, I'm eating something. And then I have a good lunch most days. I definitely don't eat as healthy as often as possible, as much as people assume, because I'm a trainer and also because I'm skinny. But for the most part, I tell people, look, if you eat well 80% of the time, 80 to 90% of the time, you can have, I tell people all the time. And what's funny is most people say, oh yeah, sure you do. But I eat donuts. I have a donut probably once every week or two because I love coffee. So I eat a donut with my coffee sometimes. And I have, some dark chocolate sometimes I'll eat a sandwich with a small bag of potato chips. And, but again, 80 to 90% of the time I'm eating healthy, and I try to eat often, and, I try not to do too many packaged foods. A lot of fruits and vegetables, raw nuts or nuts that are just slightly salted. Try to stay away from like honey roasted and things like that. Most of my produce now is organic because once I started doing that, even though it's more expensive, I can't really go back to the old stuff because I almost taste the chemicals in the fruit and vegetables. And then I definitely, I eat meat, but I try to eat fairly lean protein like fish and chicken. Definitely eat some red meat, but not a lot. And again, that works for me. My wife, Julianne, she's pretty much a vegetarian. She'll have fish some of the time, but she eats mainly vegetables and like legumes and things like that.
And then do you have a window of time that you choose to eat, or does it matter to your body?
For me, I try not to eat a heavy meal like a few hours before bed because that's one fairly fully agreed upon rule with nutrition experts is digesting food, especially like real solid food, big meals. It takes a ton of energy. And so you don't want to be working on that food while you're asleep, because then your brain's maybe resting, but your body's hard at work. And so a lot of people that eat late meals right before bed tend to wake up even after 8 to 10 hours of sleep, super lethargic. It's because their body's been working the whole night digesting the food. So that's one thing I try not to do. Usually at night, if I'm going to eat something an hour or two before bed, it's, a piece of fruit or something like that, some grapes or some watermelon, something like that.
And then as a trainer, do you find that people sleep better when they train in the morning rather than an evening? Or have you found that people's bodies get used to what they are choosing to do?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a real hard and fast rule with that. Most of my none of my clients really, the only day I stay after 6 o'clock or after 5 o'clock is on Monday. Mostly my clients are older, and so they're retired and they have a fairly, they're not at work during the day. So most of my clients come between the hours of 7 and 11, and then from like 1 to 4, 1 to 5. So I really don't know about that. I just know if you're, expending a lot of energy, you're going to most likely sleep better at night.
Very, very true. And then as you are training people as a personal trainer, is your preference to see them multiple times a week, or is it have to do with their personality and that a check-in with you once a week is sufficient because they are still doing what you tell them to or what you encourage them to on their own? What have you found with
Most
that?
of my clients come to me 2 to 3 times a week. Definitely, the more often they come, the better results they're going to get. I have this older gentleman I've been training. I had been training for about 3 months. He was only coming once a week, and his wife got him to start. I actually met him playing pickleball, and he's a super nice guy, 70 years old, former athlete, and he was doing great once a week, just sort of maintaining, getting a little stronger here and there, and just it was a good habit for him to be in. But at some point, about 3 months in, he said, I think I'm going to come a second time. Well, the difference in him has been dramatic. His strength has increased in probably like 8 to 10 exercises by about 40%. And he loves seeing that. So I honestly think in another few months, he might start coming 3 days a week.
Yeah.
But a lot of my clients, they tend to do things like yoga and Pilates in addition to me, or spinning, or pickleball, so I have no, I'm not one of those trainers that says, oh, you must come and do weights 3 days a week or 4 days a week. I think it's better, honestly, to be diversified in your activities, especially as you get older. I mean, personally, I just started doing yoga again, and it's been a godsend for my body because I beat up my body playing pickleball quite a bit. So I do that. I do some weight training, and I do pickleball, yoga, and weight training. Those are my 3 things. But I try to do something at least 5 days. Try to do 5 days a week of something.
Wow, love that. So, and then also in the training world, do you choose to train couples together, or is it pretty much a single one person at a time? Because that's their own time to be listening to their body and processing what they are working through and moving through. Because the body keeps score, right? So we can be stressed about something, working on something at work or in retirement and feeling stressed about it. We're going to feel that in our body. And coming to you then gives a place that you are such a great listener, helping them kind of process it through up here, but also then through their whole body as well.
When I first started training, 90% of my clients were one-on-one personal training. Then something happened in the business about 10 years ago. I started noticing a little bit of a shift in the industry, and it really came from people sort of diverting away from large gyms. There are a lot of smaller gyms or medium-sized gyms started popping up, and people started really flocking towards those. And what was happening, it seemed, was that people were really in a big gym. You feel like you're just a nameless, faceless person that's paying membership. When you're in a small gym where people know your name and everything, a community builds. So the good thing about my gym is that it's a small gym like that. It's like in a little 1,000-foot studio. So it's a boutique gym. And about 10 years ago, a lot of my personal training clients started asking, hey, I have a friend who would like to come with me, or hey, my husband wants to come with me. And now 90% of my clients or hours spent at the gym are small private groups or couples or boot camps, like where it's, the people don't necessarily know each other, but they get to know each other at the boot camp. And it just makes for a way better experience for everybody, I think, including me, to the point where about 5 years ago, I started thinking, I need to start throwing a Christmas party for the gym every year, because it's really like a community. Everybody started knowing each other and almost hanging out, not everybody hanging out together, but certain people would get together and hang out. And so I started throwing a Christmas party, and people look forward to it every year, and it's awesome.
I absolutely love that, because you noticed what was taking place across the industry. You were willing to go with that. You were willing to find how it worked for you and adjust what you needed to make that happen. And then to realize that as people were crossing paths between people leaving the gym and people coming into the boutique gym in Newport Beach, California, that they were then also maybe getting to know each other's maybe first name, and then having an opportunity for them to all come together around Christmas time. And for me, one of the most beautiful places that I've been at Christmas time is Newport Beach. That area is there's just something about the fresh sea air, along with it being cooler, along with it being Christmas time. There's just something about it that makes it be such a special, unique time together. We just recently were spending quite a bit of time at home as things were taking place in a larger arena. And I know that is Julianne and you guys, and you met right before all the shutdown, all those kinds of things. And so I would love for you to speak, if however you want to, about the impact of people being alone and working, trying to stay healthy, trying to continue to work out, developing relationships during times of incredible stress, and when things come into our lives that are so unpredicted, at least for ourselves. Maybe other people were predicting in different ways, but just to look at our own lives. What were some of the lessons that we can glean out of that?
Well, what happened for me was when they did the shutdown, I got really pretty frustrated with the legislation, if you will, that came down. It wasn't really laws so much. Nothing was like a law that said, it was just like, we're just shutting you down. And it really irked me because they shut down things like gyms, and yet liquor stores stayed open. So when shutdown happened, I said, okay, I'm in a small private gym. Personally, I'm going to just let my clients know, like a lot of my clients said, hey, I'm going to stop coming for a little while till we figure out what's going on. I said, okay, great. I can do outdoor workouts. So I had several people that we went to a park and just socially distanced and would do outdoor workouts. I had several people who were private clients who said, hey, as long as, you're wearing a mask, I'm wearing a mask, and we keep a little distance, I'd like to still come into the gym. And I said, I'm totally cool with that personally. We were safe as possible, but we still wanted to work out. We knew how important it was to be healthy, especially at that time. Yes. And then the biggest thing, though, was I started doing FaceTime/Zoom workouts for the rest of my clients. So it was actually great. I just cleaned out a space in my apartment so I could work out with them. And I put my computer, hooked it up to my huge TV. And I had a group of sometimes as many as 12 to 15 people on my screen. And we just did a group class from their home. And they were super creative because a lot of people didn't have weights and things, and it was hard to get them during that time. So they were using things like, rice bags for weights, or they'd fill a backpack with books and use it, for squats and deadlifts. They were using, big water bottles for bicep curls and whatever we could find. Also, I just know a lot of body weight training, just using your own body weight to work out. Yes. So I had to be super creative with that and keep them engaged. But my clients I had already appreciated my clients before this, but my clients were so awesome most trainers lost their business during COVID. My business in 2020 only went down 5% for the whole year. So my clients just stepped up. They showed me that their health to them is super important, which I knew it was, but they just, they showed the action to prove that. And we got through it together, and we made sure, that they were healthy. And, I'd say maybe 50% of people at some point in the last few years got COVID, at least tested positive, but they all got through it, fairly easily because they were healthy and because they were smart about it. And so that's how we got through it together.
I absolutely love that you shared that. And the idea of being creative, of taking circumstances that are unprecedented and choosing to look inside of that and just take a bit of a step back to say, how can I still choose to be taking care of myself? And I know that somebody reached out to me that I had known through my mom. She had come to live in Africa after the summer that I had left. And she had been teaching in Peace Place in downtown Los Angeles at a yoga studio, and decided that she was going to start teaching from home and, set it all up. And that's how I began doing yoga. And it has been a lifesaver for me.
That's awesome.
Just being able to stretch. And you're absolutely right. The body wants to heal. The body wants to remember how it can do all these different things, and to be able to have new stretches in different ways. And after doing a lot of digging on the homestead, we were doing yoga this week, and I just noticed that there was an area of my body that's usually pretty stiff and pretty grumpy. As I start to stretch out the muscles in that particular hip. And this week it was like, hey, we got this. We know how to do this. And I was like, you know what? I've been waiting for you to come back online. I knew at some point you would. And it was just so exciting to have have that experience in that. Drew, we're going to take a super quick break while I bring in something about the property here called Simply Gardening. And we're going to do a super, super fast one on that. And then we're going to come back and have a little bit more conversation about what you have coming up next. So we're going to do just Simply Gardening. Thank you. Welcome to Simply Gardening. This is our first full day to be on the farm, and we ceremoniously decided that we just had to get one box in the ground, even though it's small, all the things. But we've been studying for months about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And so in our box in the very bottom, we have a whole bunch of twigs, and the twigs are off of very specific trees. On our property, we have black walnut, and there's something in the black walnut that is not necessarily good for all things to grow. So we don't have any black walnut in there at all. The next thing we have is cardboard, and now we're beginning to work on putting some of the soil in. We're going to do some more other purchased soil as well. Compost is something that we have just begun. It's over here, so next time we'll share some compost concepts with you as well. But we just wanted to start. You might be noticing how I have my socks over my pants. We've been working in the barn, and just really, I really prefer to not have things crawling when they're not supposed to be. And so that was just, kind of, it's the nouveau look here on the farm. But we are so excited that you are joining us in this process and being here, and look forward to sharing our journey with you. And so as we do that, I would love to just share just a little bit of what we have going on here. We already have Concord grapes that are just doing incredibly well. These have been here for years, and even though we're out on a farm, there are noises that I recognize so much from the city life of Harley Davidsons and weed whackers and those kinds of things. But also we have apple trees on that section over there. We have some other fruit over here. We have blackberries, a type of blackberry that's going to do 2 times a year. And then up there we have muscadine, which is a type of like a grape, but it's very, very indigenous to this particular area. And so we've had it growing on the family property for more than 60 years, probably even longer than that. And we have kept it, my mom has kept it, my dad kept it because the birds love to hide in there, and that gives them a place to also go when they're ready to eat. So welcome to our little space, a place that we are really enjoying being. And truly, this is our first full day here, and we are so excited that you are here with us with Simply Gardening. We will be working on the sound to make sure that as we are sharing more concepts and ideas from Simply Gardening, that you can hear better with it. One of the things that I so appreciate about this land is that it is just filled with stories and concepts and parables, so to speak, of choices that we make and what happens when we make those choices and the results of that. And just a super fast side story here. My grandfather ate what he thought was the best apple ever in his life. Kept the seeds. He was a scientist. Kept the seeds, got the apple tree going, planted it. And after 30 years, the apple tree was there and wasn't producing at all, even though we have a crab apple, and you have to have a crab apple in order to be able to have apples. And the other apple trees on the farm, on the homestead, were just producing year after year after year. So all the pieces were there. Everything was fine. And this tree just wasn't doing anything. But it was a really nice break between us and the neighbors, and it's just a fun tree, right? Last year, it had a few apples, but nothing that you could really eat. And again, just kind of, isn't that interesting? Michael and I came onto the property in November, and we did some pretty serious pruning through it. Not as much as it needed, but just began to do some clean out just to see what was happening in there, and just thought, this is going to be a great apple tree. And we just had conversations. We giggled and laughed. We told stories as we were working on it. It was just a really fun experience. This year, there are hundreds of apples on there, hundreds of apples. So if there is something in your own life that you're working on, you're saying, it's not giving me the production that I want it to have, I just encourage you to be in that space, look and see if there is something else that you can do, perhaps have some fun, and then look to see if what you are looking for is going to show up in a different way. We're going to bring Drew back in. And Drew, as we're talking about different things that may take some time, I know that you have been looking at what you have been doing, putting the chapter into the book, getting speaking engagements. So grateful that you said yes to be on Simply Sarah. Are there things that you are working on to have coming up in the future that you were looking to share with people?
It's interesting. I've been thinking a lot about this lately, and something that keeps coming up from my interactions with a lot of different people is, and I don't know, I'm still doing a little bit of personal research on it, and then I'll probably start doing some more technical research on it. I don't know if it's a California thing so much, or it's a post-quarantine COVID thing, but I've noticed in my conversations with various people that people are having a hard time communicating with people nowadays, primarily when it comes to what you might consider a quote unquote conflict, even if it's a small, subtle conflict. People don't want to talk to each other about those things anymore. I don't know if they've lost their ability because of being quarantined or what, or if it's maybe a California thing. Again, I still, even though I've been out here almost as long as I was in New York, 27 years, I still have the New York in me. And if I have an issue with somebody, or if I'm feeling like I need to say something, I will try to be diplomatic and nice about it, but I'm going to tell you. If I don't, my chest tends to get tight. And what I've really just started to notice is that that's not the case with a lot of people. And what that does is it causes these festering just animosities between people that I feel need to be addressed and need to be talked about. So what I've decided to start working on is like a communication seminar of some sort. It's in the early stages right now, but to sort of like help people with that, just how to become, whether it be like just authentically communicate with people or speaking your truth, just something to urge people and teach people, if you will, how to do that. Because I feel like a lot of people have just lost their ability to do it or something. It's a bit of a fascinating thing for me right now. If I can give you an example,
Yes.
I was talking to my hairdresser a few months ago, and she had recommended this restaurant that was in her little plaza. And so I told her when I went to see her, I just came from that restaurant. Have you been going lately? She goes, I don't go there anymore. And I said, why? She said, well, the last time I was in there a few months ago, the guy making my salad was touching his face and then handling my salad, even though he was wearing, gloves. And I said, well, what'd you say to him? And she goes, I didn't say anything. I said, what are you talking about? I said, what'd you do? She goes, well, he made my salad. I paid for it. And then I threw it in the trash and went somewhere else for lunch. And I said, I'm sorry. I don't understand. I was flabbergasted. I said, why wouldn't you say anything to him? She goes, what am I going to say? I'm like, you say, can you please stop touching your face and touching my salad? She goes, I'm not going to bother. I said, okay, why don't you say something to the manager? She goes, what's he going to do? I'm like, he's going to tell him not, so anyway, I'm sitting there just almost feeling like she's speaking, alien to me, because I couldn't understand why you wouldn't just say something. And also, this guy probably didn't realize he was doing it.
Right.
So now, not only have you paid $15 or whatever it was for a salad you didn't eat, this guy is not only doing it to you, but he's probably doing it to other people. And if they're like you and don't say anything, it's going to, just keep happening. And, and the business is going to suffer because people stop going there.
Yes.
But nobody's saying anything. And so anyway, there's been other examples where it's just been mind-boggling to me, and I realize it's become an epidemic, at least the people in my life. And you might be experiencing similar things where you'll have a friend who will say something, I'm really mad at so-and-so, and you'll say, well, what'd they say when you talked to them about it? Oh, well, I didn't say anything.
Right.
It just makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah.
So
well, Drew,
I
Go
love
ahead.
having difficult conversations. I almost get off on it now, even though it's uncomfortable. I always feel better when I'm done. Like my chest is light. I'm like, at least I said my piece.
Yes.
If they don't take it the right way, that's, I did my best to be diplomatic, but at least I feel better and I've said my piece.
Yeah. Drew Mercury, I am just so grateful that you took the time to be on the show. And when you have that put together, I want you to come back on to Simply Sarah and tell us more about it, because there is such truth in what you are saying. And I think as people are business owners, that it's really important for us to be able to say there are some pieces that we need to look at and to find diplomatic ways of being able to do that, just in order to fix some things that we may not be aware of. I know that I had blind sides, right?
I encourage my clients to tell me all the time, if there's something you want me to change or, that's not working for you, please let me know.
Yeah. And I think also the way that you are receptive to it, you don't just say that as a standard, this is what I'm supposed to say. Drew, you really mean that, and you really do listen, both ears, both eyes, listening into what that person has to say as you are processing it through. And such an important thing. So when you have that all put together, come back and we'll have another conversation on that. Thank you so much for being here. And absolutely. Thank you so much for being here for this episode of Simply Sarah. I just know that the energetic tools that you are receiving on a weekly basis from these really rich conversations are ones that you are able to apply to your life, and just so glad that you are here. And just trust that you'll have an incredible week. See you next time.